Hussey. I'm so glad you're back. How you doing, man?
Thanks for having me, Jason. Good to be back, man. It's been a while since we last caught up. When was that?
Oh gosh, I mean, probably first of maybe early last year. It's probably been nearly a year. Maybe not
Man,
quite that long. 6 months to a year. Too long.
right. Yeah, too long, man. How was 2022? It looks like we didn't get quite the calm year we were promised after 2 years of COVID. How is it treating you so far?
So far, so good. And the thing that I'm finding myself, and this is something we could probably talk about for a little bit, is it seems like I needed to slow down because I have so much I want to do, which I suppose is a good thing. And I don't, because I don't say that in a bad way. All of my quote unquote busyness is self-inflicted. I could really do not a lot of things if I wanted to. But right now I really want to put the pedal to the metal, create content, write, do things like this, and just really push. And it's like, man, it's just trying to find the enough time to squeeze it in. So how about you?
Yeah, I've had a bit of a quiet start to the year. I've been like I gave up my apartment in London for a while, so I've kind of just been at home, seeing the family a bit, spending some time with them. Going to come off to America for a month, and first time I've been back in the US since pre-COVID. So I really miss it and miss all my, people I like to catch up with in New York and LA, and when I come to visit my brother. So I'm very much raring to go and going back next week. So very excited about that. Yeah, and I've been just kind of doing a lot of podcasting with my brother on our podcast, the Love Life podcast, and that's going great. So we've been getting great feedback on that, and pushing harder. I've been writing with my friend and sort of writing colleague, Michelle. So we've been back on that horse together. So yeah, it wasn't the quickest start to the year, but I feel like we've got some momentum again now.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that you're going to make the trip over. And, Jimlin and I have not been back to New York since the very, very, I think probably the first month of the pandemic, which was like, I guess February 2020 is the last time we were there. And we had already been to New York for three times in 2020 whenever everything shut down. So we're dying to get back. So if we could both make our triumphant return together, my friend, nothing would please me more.
Hey, if we can make it there, we can make it anywhere.
Absolutely.
Old New York.
That's it, baby. That's it.
We'll
Well,
take that city by storm.
okay, speaking of that, have you seen this Netflix documentary thing about inventing Anna? Have you
Oh
seen?
no, everyone's talking about that. You've got to sell me on it. What's the premise?
Okay, so it's this girl that I don't know, and I remember her name, but I don't remember following the story. Apparently, she is from Eastern Europe, and she comes over and she basically po poses as an heiress and somehow
Mm.
gets into the uber elite circles of New York society, and it turns out she's just a big, fraud. But she still to this day maintains that she's not, that she really is who she says she was. And so it's kind of it's reminiscent of, there was a guy from, I think, France that posed as a descendant of the Rockefeller family and got VIP service everywhere he went. He could go to the palm room at the plaza with his hat on backwards, and they would let him do whatever he wanted. That's how this girl is, and it's it's pretty entertaining, and it's got it just enough of that kind of you know true crime TV kind of cheesiness to it. It's got some of that, but it's all in all pretty well made for the type of story that it is. I'm enjoying it. I think you would enjoy just watching just how. Here's what I get from it. And I told Jimlin this last night. This girl is like every other Bernie Madoff or anybody else swindler. She has incredible drive and talent. It's just misdirected, and it's just amazing watching how, if you are confident enough and you believe in yourself enough and you're a good enough salesperson, you can pretty much conquer the world. And that's what she did, man. And so it's entertaining. It really is.
Yeah, you burn big and bright and then go down in flames. If it's
Yeah.
if it's all confidence, that tends to be the path, right? But it does. I was talking about this with my brother earlier because we were doing a little book club session on a Julia Galef's book, The Scout Mindset, and it's kind of about why some people like it's a book about how to be more rational and clear thinking, but the dangers of certain overconfidence. But we were talking about that, like confidence on its own and success is so charismatic,
Ah,
and it's so certainty is so seductive, and that's why we like, if it's the Tinder swindler or anyone else, success is such an overwhelming charismatic force for people that it can just blind them to everything.
and people fall for it every day, and I think social media has made that worse because now you can really make yourself look so much more important than you are, especially if you figure out how to get into the right places and get your picture taken beside the right people, which is what she did. And the thing is, and that's what when you said if you make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. That's what made me think about that. Is like that's a tough nut to crack. I mean, that's a very elite social crowd that it's well, I mean, some of the people that have cracked that nut aren't that impressive, and to the point of this show, but she did it, man. She had a meeting out of the palm of her hand. It's really crazy. And then talking about overconfidence, a great book recommendation if you have not read it yet. Adam Grant's Think Again. Have you read that one?
Oh, I did. I read that last year. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That dude is he's something. I think he's about your age. And if I'm not mistaken, is maybe the number one professor at Wharton at this point with whatever that is, whatever that means, whatever that ranking is. Or I don't know if that means he's most published or whatever, but the dude is pretty brilliant. He's something
Yeah.
else.
I thought his book Originals was excellent as
See, I
well.
haven't
That
read that
was
one yet.
Yeah, that's I think the subtitle is How Nonconformists Changed the World, but it had really good, some of these creativity books can be a little abstract and it's very hard thing to pin down like creativity, but he actually gives some really interesting insights to what fosters more original thinking, even ones that sound a bit banal, like the fact that people historically who just had many ideas
Yeah.
tended to have more great ideas.
Mhm.
So like Mozart wrote hundreds of symphonies, Picasso made thousands of paintings, and there's a kind of selection we call the masterpieces, but actually a lot of people who are very exceptional creatively, they just made a hell of a lot of work.
Yep.
And it does kind of become a bit not a numbers game, but it just allows them to try so many different experiments that eventually some hit lightning.
And that's one of the things that just as a topic that I try to encourage my daughters that we were talking about before we came on is try as many things as you possibly can. Just try to create good work in whatever that is that you're doing at that moment. Don't worry about
Yeah.
it being perfect, but just try to just kill it with that thing. And it's okay to be doing multiple things. Just keep churning out, just keep making your brain sweat. If you will do
Yeah.
that, eventually, worst case scenario, you will be a better thinker than those who just find their lane, run in it until they run it down into a rut, and they look up and go, "Oh hell, I'm done. I can't. I
Yeah.
can't."
Yeah.
So, but
That's yeah, no, it is true. It's like there's not really a great negative to coming out with like producing more and more great work wherever you do it. Like I've written blog articles, hundreds of them. I've done podcasts, I've done, videos, and it's funny when you look back at them all, it's only a percentage. There's a bunch you're happy with, but there's a small bunch that you think, man, we crushed it there. Like that one was amazing. And you don't always know when they're gonna come. But like I looked back at like 200 blog posts recently, and I realized there's like 10 absolute killers, or let's say 10 to 15 that I think, bam, that is like I could still post that today, and I posted it 7 years ago and it still hits and smashes it, and everyone shares it whenever I repost it. And it's like, your cream, you get so much disproportionate success from the exceptional ones
yeah,
that it's worth going through all the others. It's like the 80-20 rule, the Pareto rule,
yeah,
the small amount drives the most results, as in any business, the best clients drive a lot of your results, or the best product. It's happened in so many places that it's worth putting a lot out to see what the exceptional stuff is.
And I think you have to be willing to put some, not on purpose, not just to put stuff out to be putting just volume out, but it's okay to suck for a while. Most people sucked before they were ever really good. And that's what I had. That's like this podcast. I mean, I've been at this now, man, it will be 3 years in May that I've been doing this. And, a buddy of mine who has a podcast, he's out of South Carolina, James Quandall, he did some research and said, and this, man, to speak to yours and your brother's podcast, what you guys have done, this ought to make you feel good. So, of all the podcasts out there, less than 10% of them have more than 100 episodes. So you think of how many, everybody talks about, oh, there's so many podcasts. Why would you ever start a podcast now? There's so many. Yeah, but those people who start a podcast and are willing to continue on when they look at their downloads and it's 30 or 20, to be able to go in next week and go, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to go again. Yeah, that's something that I think that people should be aware of too, is that it's okay to create stuff that's not any good. I mean, Hemingway wrote some crap we'll never read. It's like Seth Godin always says, whenever somebody comes to him and says they have writer's block, he says, there's no such thing as writer's block. Show me your bad writing. And most people will say, well, I can't. I have. If you got writer's block, then go. Where's the crap that you've written while you're blocked? Well, I didn't do that.
Yeah.
No, so.
If you can't show someone the bad book, the bad novel, then you don't get to complain that you haven't finished a novel.
Exactly. Well, can we talk about what you and your writing partner are writing? Is it?
So we don't write together, in that we don't write on the same work together, but I guess Michelle, if you're listening, hello. She's my accountability buddy. She's my friend. She's someone who got in touch. I think we met early in the pandemic through email, and she's done some work for our company now and works with us, but she's a really great editor. And she also aspires to write fiction as well. So we just we at one point, just in the spirit of moving things along, we hired someone she knew who was a novelist, who is a working novelist, and came and actually did weekly sessions with us to get us to give them 5 pages. She would then read them, give us feedback each, and we'd critique each other's work. And she's writing something very different to me. She's writing more of a science fiction novel, and I'm writing more of a contemporary drama, I guess, coming of age novel. But we kind of trade, so it's like we're quite different in ways, but we trade ideas and critique. And I guess a lot of it is just a thing of getting you to put your butt in the chair and get your 5 pages out. It does a hell of a lot for you, of having no choice. And who wants to show up when you've paid a novelist however many hundreds of dollars to do sessions with them, and you're going to show up with no pages? It kind of feels stupid and a waste of time. So you tend to show up when you have that.
What have you shown up and had any, because I've never done anything like that. I think that's a great idea. I kind of crowdsourced my last book that we'll talk about in a minute, that I've got coming out pretty soon. I just had a lot of people just read it, give me some feedback. When you do that, was there ever a time where you had put something on the page that you thought, oh, I love this sentence, just this one, it's beautiful, and she was just like, no, or was there some other thing that she loved that you were like, that was easy? I mean, were there any big surprises from any of your sessions, or have there been so far?
Yeah, well, that was the really cool thing, because you don't often get a chance to have a professional, someone who's, she's a working novelist. That's how she pays the bills. That she's had some great successes. I think one of her novels is being turned into a TV show now. So she's really good at what she does, and it's very nerve-wracking, because it's very different showing it to a professional always. But actually it was much more encouraging than I anticipated, because I would get something that felt very anything I felt was a little idiosyncratic or weird, or a very specific moment, let's say, in the novel, that I thought this is a bit of a weird bit, or this is a bit of a funny line of dialogue, or this is a kind of odd moment that's kind of weird or dirty or funny or crazy, like that would often be the part where I was getting a lot of like that would be like, that is hilarious, or that you've got to keep that in there, or that line is so beautiful or so funny or so perfect. And it would often be the bits that I felt were a little bit on the edge of weird. And so that was a really interesting lesson of leaning. I have to learn this over and over again, but leaning into your own strange voice,
Yep.
whatever it might be.
Yep.
I don't think my voice is particularly strange in writing. It's not. I mean, if you read someone truly offbeat, it's not out there in like the electric Kool-Aid acid test, or Thomas Pynchon or someone like that. But who are great, by the way. But no, but there's some bits where you are a little embarrassed, you feel a little bit vulnerable, or you feel it's a bit strange, and those were often the parts that they loved. So I really thought, man, I've got to push harder here, because your temptation is to sand off the edges or to appeal to as many people as possible. At least there's some conformist streak in all of us at times. It's like, maybe I don't want to go to this weird place, or that's going to sound too kooky. And it just taught me to lean into that stuff more. And I heard David Bowie once, there's some quote he had about that, where he talked about how all the interesting stuff at the bleeding edge, he tries to always be on the idiosyncratic and the edge of his weird little idiosyncrasies. And all those bits in David Bowie songs where you're like, I'm not sure what the hell he means by that, but it
Yeah.
sounds good. Or I'm not sure what Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars are exactly, but I don't know. There's something sticky about that. It's a crazy idea, but
It's that you're so right. That reminds me of Liam Gallagher. No, it was Noel was asked one time about I guess it was Champagne Supernova, and
right.
and he said and someone had asked him one time, what slowly walking down the hall faster than a cannonball, and they said, so what does that mean? He goes, I have no fucking idea. He said, but when I sing it in a concert, the entire arena sings it back to me. So it must have meant something to someone. It meant nothing to me. And that's a lot of what I love about Noel Gallagher and his lyrics. But he's like, he would write things. It just sounded good. That's why I wrote it. It just sounded good. It went with the riff that I created. And that's something it's cool to hear you say that, because I do have a twisted mind, not like in some weird murder sadistic way, but you could just ask my wife and children. I'm the weirdest guy that they know. I mean, my wife tells me all the time, I love you, but you are just weird. And so it's hard for me to sometimes want to write those things, because the people that I would get to, kind of look over and say, hey, what do you think about this? They'd be like, oh God, I knew you were kind of goofy, but really, where did that come from? But I guess you do have to do that. And it worked like, I always butcher his name, but Chuck Palahniuk, he wrote Fight Club and Pygmy and all those. I mean, now he gets he's obsessed with sex, which is kind of gets on my nerves a little bit, but I still love his writing style. And it will just all of a sudden, it's so bizarre, his character, sometimes it just makes me laugh out loud, which is
Yeah.
I enjoy. There's always an audience somewhere, right? We're not all that unique.
Yeah. It's really funny, because when you read certain stuff, you think, where the hell does that come from? And yeah, certainly some of those Chuck Palahniuk ones. I remember reading one of his that was about the girl, the spoiled girl who goes to hell. I think it's called Damned
Damned.
or
Yeah.
something. And
Yeah.
it's so dark and so, like a lot of his books are. Yeah, I mean, they're all extremely dark. If you've seen or watched Fight Club, you know the tone. But that some of the ideas in that, his visions of hell, are so ridiculous and dark and outlandish, but the images are hilarious. Like there's some desert of like used diapers or something, and there's all these like just horrible ideas, but it's just, yeah, it's a silly image that you'd think maybe a child would think of. But sometimes there are things like that where it's just like, I was writing it and it made me laugh. And so I've got to do it now. And
Yeah.
I've got to go for it because it's the idea that's there. And I think I struggle. I mean, fiction is something I do. It's not my job. So I do it for fun. I do it for passion. It's a pure desire led project, which is good because at least I know it comes from a pure place of desire. But it's something I've over the years had incredible over analysis, anxiety. At times, it's put me in a really bad place because I've wanted to do it and then abandoned things or been crippled with self doubt. And whereas I don't doubt I can write blogs and podcasts, and there's certain other areas where I can just put that stuff out all day and I don't agonize over it. So it's something tied up in it. And when I let go of, I think I used to have an idea and then squash it with overthinking it and why doesn't it sound like those other novels I've read and it should be perfect. And there was all this stuff that I don't do in any other part of my life, but I was applying it here instead of being like, haha, that line of dialogue is funny. What if she said that next? That would be a funny thing to say. And what would happen then? And then I don't mind as much going down a weird garden path because it's just like, this is what I have in me today. I
Yeah.
don't have anything else.
Right.
I can't make something I don't have. And so this has got to be entirely me. And whatever that is, whatever the good and the flaws are of me and my writing style and my voice and my skills and my lacking, if it feels like that, then I win.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it now. As long as it feels like that, I've won the game.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, and it's good to hear you say that because the bottom line is if you feel comfortable being God, which is what an author of fiction is in a very micro way. I mean, which is kind of what I never thought, like the most recent thing I wrote is fiction. And I had never considered writing fiction, really. I have some ideas for some memoirs that have some fictional accounts, maybe to kind of make it funnier. But I never thought until I started writing it, there became this like, I can literally do what I'm creating people out of thin air and they can have whatever personality, whatever insecurities, they can be as heroic or as timid as I want them to be. And that becomes really fun. One of my best book ideas that kind of goes to one of the topics we were talking about offline is the title I think is brilliant. So I need to write the book. It's called Orgasm at a Funeral. And to me, is that not just a brilliant title of deserving of a book? And there's a story behind it, not an orgasm at a funeral, but I'm like, and so I was like, if and for me, the type of memoir that I would write, that's probably how it would start. It would be a story about somebody dying. And I would title it Orgasm at a Funeral. I'm telling you, it needs to be written just because of the title.
Yeah, it does. That's already, I want that story. I'm already imagining a whole scenario there.
You could go some, well, yeah. Well, we won't chase the rabbit too deep because that's
at least a great Chekhov short story, one that Chekhov never wrote.
Exactly. So
what? So wait, tell me this. You've been writing, right? You've put something out. Tell me about your process and experience with that. Was that, well, tell me about it and how did you find sitting down and doing it and putting it out there?
So I was reading Atomic Habits by James Clear. And there's one quote in there that ended up having nothing to do with my book, but it did inspire the idea about a rock hammerer or something. I don't remember what it was and so it prompted this idea. And then one of my favorite books of all time is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And I've studied logotherapy and just kind of I'm a total subscriber to the idea that, our life happens inside, and it's not about life happening to us. It's what's the opportunity and how are we going to react in that moment? What are we going to do with that? And so it just always has resonated with me. And then, Stephen, I kid you not, man, it was like a downpouring. I got the idea for the book. I went to a coffee shop and hammered out 5 chapters just like that. And it's a parable. And the plot is this boy, I won't give away too many details, but this young boy, Giovanni Cristiani, it takes place in the Renaissance era. He ends up having to serve out the sentence of his father's crime because his father is unable to serve it out. And he's cast into this prison that is, it's an outdoor prison. It's set in Florence, and Florence being interested in beauty and all the like. They don't want to send prisoners to the stench any longer. They want them. They've created this now outdoor prison where, and they also think that this is almost more of a punishment mentally because they're out in the sun and they're tethered to these giant boulders that are bigger than them. And for the rest of their life, all they do is chisel away at this stone in vain, kind of like, and I put in the book, it's like digging a hole only to fill it back up again. There's nothing to it but that. And they live in these little huts that are right next to the stone. Well, as is generally the case, as Joseph Campbell lets us know that in the hero's journey, a mentor shows up, an unsuspecting mentor, and he questions the boy as to what he is. And of course, the boy says he's a stone chiseler. That's what everyone in this prison is a stone chiseler. And however, throughout the book, what you see is this young boy making the decision to go from stone chiseler to sculptor. And it's not, although he does end up shaping the physical stone, obviously the more important chiseling that he's doing is his person and his character through this struggle and finding meaning in where he is at this time. And then there's some cool elements to some little pieces of historical fiction that I toss in, but I don't broadcast, so that someone like you would read it and immediately go, "Oh my God, I know who that is! Wow!" And then I wanted to make it in the movie Forrest Gump, how they had Forrest have these flashes with real life, with John Lennon on the Dick Cavett show, I guess, and he meets Nixon, and he just kind of brushes these historical figures because he's there. It's taking place at that time. Well, with this one being set in the Renaissance era, and this is what was really funny about it, Stephen. I'm writing, and the mentor that walks up starts talking to the boy, and I kid you not, man, this whole thing was like watching a movie and just writing down what I was seeing. And I asked myself, I go, and I'm not going to say the name because I want the reader to get to kind of decipher for themselves who the mentor is. I go, is that? And I said the name in my head. I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm like I were a reader. So I was like, that's pretty cool. So aside from me being the worst freaking editor on the planet, and I did try to, I didn't my first couple books I did, which are business type books, you know, about how I escaped from corporate America and got into entrepreneurship. I had an editor and she's fabulous, but this one I didn't hire her. I did hire an editor and then had a bunch of just kind of crowdsource editing done because I'm so bad at it. But anyway, I think it's a good story. It's a quick read. Like I said, it's a parable. And I think it's I'm excited about it. And again, if no one ever reads it, if no one, the people who have proofed it, they said they liked it. Well, you know, because what are they going to say? But I'm kind of proud of it. So the title is The Stone Chiseler. And actually, I want to show you. I had one of my close friends. And this is one of the reasons why I think it was meant to be. So I'm trying to decide on the cover art. And I'm like, man, I knew in my mind exactly what I wanted. I knew exactly what it should look like. And then I thought, holy crap, Richie Deegan, who's an artist in Austin, friend of mine, it's like, this is totally Richie's style of art. And so I reached out to Richie. I said, Richie, what would this cost me? And he sent me to his website. I'm like, dude, that's more than the whole, you know, publishing the book and marketing and everything. I don't know if that makes good business sense. And he said, well, what can just tell me what you want to do. I said, well, here's what I'll do. I said, I'm going to send you the manuscript, the first rough draft, read it. And if you want to be a part of the project, let's figure something out. And about 3 weeks go by, I don't hear from Richie. I'm like, he thinks this thing just sucked. And he's like, God bless Jason's heart. And then all of a sudden I get an email from him. He said, dude, who the hell wrote this? He said, I'm in. What, let's do this. He said, I'll get some sketches. And I knew, and I didn't tell him. I didn't tell him exactly what I had in mind. I just said, here, this is your style of art. You've read the story. So, show me what you think. And I'm going to show this to you real quick, the painting, because it's so badass.
Yeah, please. For those on audio right now, Jason is rummaging through his man cave.
Thank you for filling the air, Steve.
To pull out a big painting. Oh, it's a lot bigger than I thought it would be. Oh, wow. Oh, that's awesome.
Is that not amazing?
Oh, that's really cool.
Obviously, that's the stone chiseler. And there's his fellow prisoners. So
that is really badass, that painting.
I think, and so what the hell did I do with my
that reminds me a little of that, that mega super popular book. What is it, like The Boy, the Fox, the Horse, the Mole, and the something?
Yeah,
what is that book?
I can't remember.
That book has like really vivid art. The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. Yeah. That book has really has like just lovely vivid art, but that artwork gives me an impression of that very grand sweeping drawing.
And I think that Richie actually named it Tether and Stone. And this is just kind of telling on myself. So I get it already. I set a pre-order date, and then so I set this arbitrary timeline for myself to get the Kindle version out. And I put it up, and I have the cover, which to me, the cover was just so important. Well, I'm trying my best to do this all myself because I want to be more prolific. I want to, like what we were talking about earlier, I want to be able to write a book and go through the Kindle process and get stuff out, not have to depend on all these different vendors and resources. Just, I want to be able to, actually take advantage of Kindle publishing. And so I have it up there, and the cover, it's gorgeous. Well, then I create the cover for the paperback or the print version, and I post it. And so instead of, like, if you go to Kindle, instead of getting to see that gorgeous art, you see the front and the back cover. It's like spread out. So you see the back cover and the front. So which takes away from the actual, that beautiful art. So whenever the print version and the audio version come out, they'll have those actual thumbnails of that beautiful painting that Richie did. So anyway, that's the Stone Chiseler.
That's so cool, man. And do you think the actual process came from something you were dying to express, or do you think it was just like a great idea? Was it a theme you realized, like, that theme is something I'm obsessed with? What do you think was the genesis?
Yeah, I think, okay, good question. I think several things. One, I want to make my life, or make my living as a writer. I can't think of a better way, because just like we talked about Anne Lamott last time, I love being able to show up and not have to be there. I mean, I think that writing, it just checks all of my life's ambitious boxes, none of which are monetary. It's just, if I could make my living in the printed word, that would be amazing. So there's that. But yes, the message is what I think really resonated with me, Stephen. I think we're living in a world where it's the exact opposite of this story, and it's the exact opposite of Viktor Frankl's message. It's like we have so many people preaching to us constantly these days that our entire life is dictated and shaped and by outside forces. It's like we have no agency over our feelings, over our lives, we have no agency. And not only that, but we don't have all the evil forces are dictating our life's every move, and only some other outside forces can save us. And we're just left to wait for the savior, and until then endure the bad, and give the saviors the necessary resources to fight the bad. But never in there is there much talk about, hey, you have so much agency, and all these things that we're telling you are what you deserve and will make you happy and make your life better. Most of the things that are being sold by those individuals have nothing to do with where real peace and joy and fulfillment come from, which costs very little money, doesn't take a lot of effort, actually. It's just getting your mind right and getting your heart right, and loving people, and going and finding others, to give service to. And so I was just so, I could do one. It's kind of like this podcast and just a lot of the things that I do right now. I could beat my fist and bitch and yell and, get all politically active for some cause. But instead, I just want to put stuff out there that hopefully it's meaningful, and it's encouraging, it's edifying. And that's what I want this book to be. I want people to read it and go, I can relate to Giovanni. And then, and that's another thing too, man, is that the chisel, I think, is a perfect metaphor for so many people's lives, and the boulder. It's like, and I just want to, and hopefully that, if I'm ever, over in UK giving my TED talk, I'll be sure and tell everybody, okay, now go pick up your chisel. That's what I'll
Yeah,
be doing.
man.
So,
I love that. I love that whole message so much. I'm really excited. I'm really excited to read it. I can't wait to go and
well,
get a copy.
well, I'm nervous
Yeah.
because you're obviously, as a scholar and someone, my God, you're going to read it and go, oh, poor Jason. But as long, hopefully, my poor grammar and my poor sentence structure doesn't get in the way of what I do think is a badass story.
That's awesome, man. You got a badass story. You're there. That's that's the hardest bit. Um, yeah, that's so cool. I love that message where I think I mean, we don't need to get into the state of the world and all that too much, but unless you want to. But the yeah, it is funny how with all the sort of almost mushrooming of all these ever greater conspiracy theories, ever greater, you know, ex boogeyman is doing this. It's the big bad left, or it's the big bad right wing.
Yep.
It's these other spooky people in the top of the pyramid who are pulling all the strings, and
Yeah.
they're the reason all these terrible things are happening. It's a I find it very very weird impulse to, the conspiracy impulse is there as the superstition, the finding patterns thing, but the desire, almost desire, I would call it, to want there to be an external force that is really determining everything in your life, I find a very lamentable aspect of human nature to want that, or almost want it. I'm convinced on some level it's subconscious desire to want these boogeymen are pulling all the strings, and it really diminishes you. It really diminishes the individual in a big way, and makes you very small and very powerless.
Do you think that that's because if they were to take the other approach away from that, then they would be left with, oh, wait a minute, you mean I actually have to participate in fixing this? If there is no boogeyman, and if there's no one I can look to save me, then that only leaves the person in the mirror. And that, I think, unfortunately, for a lot of people these days, man, has become the scariest thing of all. Is
Mm.
And they just don't want to face the fact that no one will ever love you as much as you have the potential to. Your
Mm.
family, right? And that may sound terrible, but no one will ever be able to help you. I can't give you enough of my wealth to make you wealthy. I can't give you enough of my acceptance to make you feel accepted. At some point, you have to take it upon yourself to go, I accept who I am. I'm good with who I am. Not in some asshole way of going, and if you don't like it, screw you, but to say, I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable in my own skin. And I know that's a lot easier said than done. I know there's a lot of people that have a lot of history that leads to why they have these insecurities and whatever. But man, I can't help but think that, as a matter of fact, talking about writing, I've got a great idea for a short story. essentially where I mean, I hate to give away the punchline, but people will probably long since forget about it if I ever decide to write this. But essentially, imagine there's generations of leaders throughout this family, and it goes through. Let's say you started in the early, I guess it makes this maybe the early 18th century, and all of a sudden you're in the 21st century, and all of these men or women that have taken the mantle as the leader and of the family. And they have a vast fortune, let's say. They're whatever important is, whether it's financial, politically, who cares? They're just and it's this there's it always comes down, the weight falls on one person. And starting back at the very beginning, they know that there is almost like a family treasure, but it comes with a warning that if things get so bad, if you truly have to, break the glass of the fire extinguisher to save the family, just know it's going to come with heavy consequences. It's going to come with more pressure. It's going to come with all these. It's just going to just this huge warning, right? Just this enormous warning. So all through the generations, you've got one that was a leader during the Great Depression and was able to muddle through it and never broke the glass. Then you've got another that went through the 60s and the turmoil of the Vietnam War and civil rights, and that nearly destroyed the family empire. But it's not. But they made it through without breaking the glass. Then finally, and then the story opens with this guy that's sitting at his desk, just wringing his hands, and finally, he or she goes and says, "No other choice. I've got to go and find." And it's based, let's say it's just in a wall safe. Let's say that all these generations have lived in the same mansion all these years, and it's been sitting there, it's been like teasing them. You open it up, and what you find there, pull it out, you turn it, and it's this ornate mirror. And
Oh, that's great.
so, again, it's up to freaking you. No, there's no savior. There's no buried treasure, man. There's no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's freaking you that's got to do this. And so then you just see the person collapse, and then the story goes on with phone calls being made, get the troops in order, and they too prevail, or it's either that or crumble, right? So anyway,
Yeah,
that's another book idea.
I love it, man. I love it. And you're good, man. You're good at a metaphor. And, you should write like Aesop's fables.
Well, I told you, one of your fellow alums, C.S. Lewis, man, now that's the master of the metaphor. And I get that. There's a whole nother one that I used in this story that let's talk about writing practice, 'cause I want to know yours, and I've got to shut up. This is kind of a lopsided conversation here, Stephen
No,
Hussey.
I'm enjoying it, man. Sure.
So I grew up on both sides of the proverbial tracks, the good side and the bad side. My family, my mom and dad divorced when I was young. My dad lived on the side of the town where there were streets named after our family, including me. And then on the other side, where my mom, when they were divorced, lived, was I lived around all the kids that got free school lunch, and their dads were renting their houses. They didn't own the houses, so I literally went back and forth. And the old frame house that my mom lived in it had this antechamber. You walked up the steps, and then you walked into this antechamber. Then you walked into the front living area. And so I used the analogy that front door was very much like the wardrobe, that you walked into the front of the wardrobe, but when I walked through the antechamber and into the living room, I was in a completely different world than where I had come from the week before, which was the right side of the tracks. I thought that's
And it's also got a pun on your name, which is good as well.
there you go, which is
Perfect.
that's always good, right? Yeah. So tell me about your book as much as you can. I mean, because that's the sort of thing I would love to be able to write something contemporary, and I love and is yours. You said it's contemporary, like drama. Is
Mm.
that in the vein of like the Thomas Crown Affair? Thinking of or is it What
Uh,
kind
I'd more categorize it as like a kind of classic coming of age novel, a bit somewhat of a campus novel because I spent a long time at universities, so I wanted it to reflect my life around those places, and it's useful to write about places you know very well and you understand the lay of the land there, and it's not my university life, but it plucks elements from everything I've seen and known, and different people and characters, and so there's some, like, I mean, god, not that I just not I'd put myself in those camps, but there's some just absolutely classic campus novels written by, especially in the English tradition, like
Chariots of Fire is what the first one that comes.
right, and A Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Waugh, who wrote about Oxford, and there's some really funny, I think it's Tom Sharp wrote one, and there's loads of great, like, English university. Stephen Fry's written some funny things about Oxford, I think, in his novel The Liar. And it's just some really comic good moments that you can have in those, and yeah, and so I wondered a bit about those early relationships that happen, what it's like to be going through that transition period from youth to adulthood, and it just feels like a rich topic that I think I'm far enough from it now to look back on it with some context and objectivity. So yeah, that's sort of where I'm playing now, but it's like a lot of things I treat as a long experiment, and I some experiments work and some don't, and some become great passions of mine, and that's how I do treat my interests. And podcasting started as an experiment for me. I've grown to love it, and I do it with my brother now, and it's a great bonding thing for us. We have fun, we get great listeners, we have great conversations, and it started as a small itch that I was just like, I love radio and I love, like, getting to have conversations like this. I did one with my friend George. That was an experiment, speaking generally podcast, and he even wants to maybe do that again, so we might go and do another series of them perhaps. But yeah, and this as well, investing for me became a great passion over the last 5 years. I started dabbling in that and got more and more and more into it, and had some successes, and now it's an obsession of mine. Like, I've read so many investing books, and it's like one of my great passions. And so yeah, writing, as we spoke about last time we spoke, has been there for a long time for me. I think it's kind of like with fiction, it was like time to put up or shut up. And I've done short stories, I've dabbled, I've submitted some. I got one like shortlisted for a competition once, but like all like, just like nibbles here and there, but nothing substantial. But I think it's just like, well, let's do this, and if it's a bad novel, that's super cool anyway. Maybe it'll be an okay novel with some really good bits in it, and maybe it'll be a good novel, I don't know. But there's certainly bits I really like, and more there's like whole sections where I think, like, well, I love that. If it was all like that, it'd be great, but the challenge is making it all like that. And so it's just I call them like my elephant projects, and sometimes you just have to take on an elephant project. I did it with a PhD. That took me like 4 years. I've ran a marathon. That took me a year of training. Sometimes you just find a thing and you're like, this is my elephant project right now. And finishing it is just some, like, it does something for you that stays with you for a long time. Like I still look back on my PhD, and it's not about what it got me or anything. It's just, there's a pride to, like, man, that was so difficult and it took so much work, and I did it, and I got the degree, and it really meant something. And, I think some people overthink where everything has to lead to. Whereas sometimes it's just because it's in my heart that this will be a good thing for my soul to finish, and I care about it. And that's what it is. So that's what this is for me.
I could not agree more. Well, it goes back to what we were talking about my brilliant business idea that we talked about before we got on today. Is like they're just creating those moments for challenge and and let that be the joy. And if it leads to something, that's what I said about this cheesy book that I wrote. I mean, the older I get, the less I like this book. This was my first book, Stephen Hussey, and
Okay.
you're not missing anything by it, although it does look it makes your toilet look a lot better if you have or your loo, and if you put it in the loo and have it sitting there beside it, it really brightens the place up. But for me, I knew I was never going to be a bestseller. That's not what that wasn't the object. The object was to go through the process of getting a book written and getting it published and to be able to say, I'm an author. I have a book out there. And I think that more people, if they would understand that, then they would like, for me, that's the reason why I went to graduate school. Was I thought there was somewhere that I was supposed to go and I had to get that credential before I could get there. I didn't really know where that somewhere was, but now it's like I would never take on that. If I were going to spend that kind of time and energy, it would be on writing a book. Same thing. I've thought about getting a doctorate, and it would at this point in my life be because I want the rigor. I want to be forced into that threshold of pain, and then come out on the other side and go, okay, I did it. Not because I want to, go teach or something like that, but no, just it's the process. And I think when you can learn to appreciate the pruning process, the hurt, the pain, the ups, the downs, then that's where the real magic is. And I always tell people, like I mentioned a minute ago, there is no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. There's just only that which you pick up along the way. And and a lot of that gold comes disguised as pain, heartache, struggle, things that you never thought that mile 24 of a marathon where you think there is no freaking way. Why the hell did I do this? This was dumb. But now you look back on it and you go, that is gold in your pot that you will have
Yeah.
with you when you and I are doing this when we're 85. You'll be like, yeah,
Yeah.
I ran that marathon.
No, it's a source of something. It adds richness to you, and it gives you a kind of, I don't know, a repeated confidence from having done those things. It's like I've proved I can do difficult things, and I've
Yeah.
done difficult things. I wrote a book with my brother when I was 23, and that was really difficult, and that proved to me that that was, um, are there things I would go back and change about that book now? Sure. I'm sure there would be things I would do differently. I'm sure there's things we'd both, edit it and things like that if we could. But like that was our full effort at the time. And that was great. And it was a great thing. And so many people have read that, and it was cool. And yeah, it's like everything doesn't need this grand strategy behind it. Sometimes you are making strategic moves because you're good at something and you double, triple down because you're like, hey, I'm doing good here. But yeah, it's more of a confidence building thing. And there's things I drop as well. There's some things I get obsessed with them for like 3 months, and I realize like I'm not really good enough at this to be obsessed. Like I'm not loving this as much anymore. And like I really enjoy playing chess, but like I'm not a great chess player. And I learn about the game, I play it for fun. But there was a point where I realized I can only be so obsessed with this because I'm actually not good enough about it to get so excited. Like it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a limit because like, there's only so much I can play something and feel like I'm not really making that much progress. And so there's kind of sometimes I will just go on and yeah, it's like that's the next month binge on this. And I do it with books as well. So, and some things some things have given me amazing benefits later that the payoff was not immediate. But like, I will just choose if there'll be a topic where it's like, I don't know why, but I want to read about physics. And I will buy like 5 books on physics at the same time. And Tyler Cowen has talked about doing this himself. He's kind of like a polymath and a very wide-ranging knowledge, an economist, sort of libertarian economist at George Mason University. But he says, if you're interested in the topic, get like a stack of books on it, because you kind of almost want it to feel a bit more like a buffet. and see what you respond to, see what you enjoy. Maybe it's a history of art, or you want to read about, yeah, I now want to learn a lot about China and got a bunch of books on China. Just all different bits, the economy, the history, the culture, the whatever. Because I'm just like, I want to sponge. It's a big important country. It has huge standing in the world. I want to understand it a bit more. I want to like have a bit more grasp on it, and so I just go on like a binge of that, and just like, okay, this 2 months I'm obsessed with China and just want to learn about it. And so, but those things have always had some kind of tangential payoff. Um, Either in, it gives me new knowledge to bring to other things I do. Sometimes applying one piece of knowledge to another field or an insight. When I speak on stage, I'll have so much more to draw from, so much more knowledge. I'll have literature, I'll have history, I'll have science, and it all adds to part of it. Or having done physical things means that, well, I'm not just talking as an academic intellectual. I've also rode at Oxford. I've done marathons, been in a team for this, and so I've got understanding of what it means to physically push yourself. And you know, I know some of your work is about being well-rounded, and and I don't think, I think some people get a little they think, oh, but don't you just do one, focus on just one thing and be an expert and just drill and that's your thing. And I think the age of the generalist is actually having quite a comeback.
Yeah.
I think, and I know seems a bit all over the place, but I think it's related to this, is where people think like, you have to pick your lane, do your thing, nail that down, become the king of the niche, and just conquer that niche. And sure, there's times like, look, if you're trying to grow a YouTube channel, sometimes it can be helpful to just be I'm the weightlifting guy. I
Right.
am the card trick guy. I'm the guy who does, I don't know, who talks about Chinese stocks or whatever. Maybe it like helps to be the one thing person. That I get it. I've been in that field and understand that game. But when you're thinking about yourself as a person, I think that the generalist has so many ways they can, tools they can bring to bear on different problems and different areas, and ways of, they can change their hat they're wearing to think in a different way, to bring a humanities perspective. Sometimes I bring a data perspective because I understand data as well, because I've studied economics and econometrics and statistics, and I do understand those things. And sometimes I understand the rationalist approach to it, so I can think about business in a very rationalist, strategic way, because I understand concepts of rationality. And hey, are we in status quo bias here? Are we in confirmation bias? Are we doing all these things and new ways of thinking? So everything comes to bear, and I've found all of it in my career has built towards different skills. Blogging gives me the skills, taught me how to write to be read well, which academia does not always teach you. Academia does not always teach you how to engage people in your writing, and blogging does. So you learn some tricks from that. So anyway, long story short, I've found following my little weird curiosities and obsessions, even if sometimes they're dropped after one achievement or finishing one part, I always find they carry forward and add something to the tool belt I have.
I could not agree more with anything you just said. And you also kind of make me, maybe it's confirmation bias, but you make me feel good because I feel like I'm the ultimate generalist at this point in my life. And you know, and a lot of the reason why is because like what I find myself, a great example. So I mentioned the inventing Anna, documentary, whatever, docudrama. And I was talking to Gemma the other day, and I said, you know, I know not every, but I know most and definitely enough ways to make a crap ton of money. I know exactly how to do it. I know how to go do it tomorrow. And none of it interests me because I think that, I think 2 points I want to make about what you said. For me, doing something purely for the sake of I guess a reward, whatever that looks like, monetary or otherwise, just isn't worthwhile for me anymore. Now, granted, there's some things that I have, there's some sacrifices I made in my life to be able to have that attitude. But I think most of us could have that attitude if we really, really got serious about it. But nevertheless, I don't care about just doing that one lane thing, because if you do that, what's the reward? They'll say, well, but we have a house in Aspen, and we go to St. Bart's every summer, and we do, it's like, okay, what if I told you you could save yourself all that money and find all that joy, peace, and happiness right at home? And it's one of the things that Jimlyn and I, we consider ourselves very blessed. I told her the other day, I said, the cool thing about it is it doesn't matter if we go to St. Bart's or if we go to Aspen or we're in Boulder, wherever, fill in the blank. Wherever we go, there we are. And it's just the scenery changes. Our happiness and our joy and our thrill is right here in Tyler, Texas. And we take that to beautiful places that
Yeah.
offer some temporary decoration. And it's the same thing with projects. It's like, and I love being well-rounded. Now I want you to, there was a quote I just read, man, and it makes me say, I hate even, this audience will hear it, and audience, please, I'm not quoting this as an elitist or anything of that nature, but going back to talking about the people that they believe that their whole life is dictated by outside forces. There was a quote by someone that said, and you may know who it is, said, either the more I know or the more intelligent I get, the lonelier I become. I can't
Mm.
remember. It wasn't an intellectual, it was some leader, thought leader of some kind. And I thought about that. And man, when I feel that way, but it's not because I can sit down with Stephen Hussey and have a decent conversation about literature. I mean, you could, take off and leave me anytime, but I can at least kind of make it interesting and sound like I know what I'm talking about. And I know economics and I know those, that has nothing to do with it. What I find is the the more I realize of what doesn't matter in life and what really does matter and what really brings joy and fulfillment and scratches my itches, the lonelier I am, because I'm surrounded on a daily basis by these people. God bless them. They're just living their lives. They think that, well, I've got the Mercedes, S class and the country club membership, and we go skiing every spring break and Christmas morning. Wow, you should see it. And so why would I read, something that they made me read when I was in school? Why would I
Right.
do that? It's like, well, because maybe if you did enough of that, or maybe if you just started journaling and that led to a blog and that led to a book, and you were so occupied with taking these inner feelings that start to stir, then you save a hell of a lot of money, and you might find a lot more wealth and fulfillment in that, just sitting with a pen and a notebook and writing and having an amazing cup of coffee,
Yeah.
just savoring these little bitty, almost, just cost nothing little things in life. Um, and I find myself like Jimlyn and I went to a beautiful cocktail party the other night. It was just over the top. This house was gorgeous, man. And I'm sitting there and I mean, and the conversations going around were like, anything you'd expect. We're talking about the oil and gas industry and inflation and, this, that, and the other, and pointing out all the gorgeous artifacts around the house. And I'm just going, anybody here want to talk about the last really good book they read or how they're managing their insulin levels? Hey, anybody want to talk about battling insulin resistance? And so anyway, and I don't say that saying I'm better than anybody. I'm not saying, I'm just saying, in fact, I just think that I've just been able to get in touch with something kind of like what, again, C.S. Lewis, which, by the way, one of my favorite parts of Surprised by Joy is when C.S. Lewis wrote of his primary education and his coming of age, when he wrote about that and the traditions at school. And I think he did include some of his the traditions at Oxford. My favorite part of the book, Surprised by Joy, but the thing I love about that book is he described exactly what I'm saying. It's like you pursuing your PhD, you pursuing a marathon, investing, you just going after these things. if you were pursuing happy the way we have taught most of the people over here on this side of the pond how to do it, you would be pursuing how to make a lot of money and go to the coolest places. But really, and that's pursuing happiness, and happiness isn't a thing. It's not a destination. What'll happen is you'll be doing something when you least expect it. And it often hides itself as just drudgery, but then all of a sudden, the joy or the happiness will sneak up on you. Go, huh? I mean, where'd you come from? You know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so that's the sort of thing, man. That the improve always and always is the motto of my show, and the reason why I focus so much on doing the things we're talking about, just taking on different interests and making myself more well-rounded and just better, is because I think a better me leads to a better community. And if I'm happier and I'm better at being me, then hopefully that fruit of that will spill over and make me better to help my fellow man. And maybe they'll go, dude, you sure do seem happy. Well, you got something. What are you doing? And I'll go, hey, let me tell you, brother, come here. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the underrated powerful things you can do is when if you can be an example to people. And sometimes I haven't even been aware of not that, I don't go around acting joyful all day, but
you don't
I
skip,
do
you don't skip,
pardon?
you don't skip when you want. I mean,
Yeah, I often have the opposite problem where people always think I'm not in a good mood because I have a very sort of blank expression a lot of the time. But I I will be like having done something challenging or difficult, and I will not know about it. But like my cousin will say, "Oh, I find it's really inspirational when you do these things like starting a YouTube channel or doing a podcast or you ran a marathon." Or she said, like, when you get involved, just go into these things and you just do them. And she said it like inspires me to create more or to make things or to just go for it because, you know, I'm just like an ordinary guy and just, pursue the things that I like to do. And it's just you don't know who you're inspiring when you take those leaps.
yep, yep.
And yeah, people go, oh man, I guess maybe that's possible. Like maybe it's possible to do that. Or you suddenly travel somewhere exciting and people think, maybe I can travel somewhere exciting on my own as well. Like Steve just did that. I'm that kind of person as well. So you do never know who you're inspiring. And did you ever read? Did we talk about Candide last time by the novel by Voltaire? Did we talk
No,
about that? Maybe
no.
not. There's a great not to spoil the punchline, but there's a great sort of the final thing in that is like Candide goes through all these. He goes out into the world and with this mentor, Dr. Pangloss, and Dr. Pangloss is kind of Candide's. It's a satire, but it's kind of his mocking of a certain kind of philosopher who is at the time was the very hyper rationalist philosopher who was thought they could perfect the world and through pure philosophy you can create the perfect world. And it was very like idealistic, and Pangloss would always tell him this is the best of all possible worlds. And Candide would go through this book and he just sees just one horror after another, just like war, violence, like rape, and just like he just all these calamities before him and his group, and he just goes out into the world and just sees like, man, the horror outside your doorstep, and there's disease or there's all these things. And they kind of toward to the end of the novel is kind of like they're asking the question like, what do you put your hope in then? Is it politics? Is it that
Mm.
religion will save you? Is it that some other divine force or science or whatever? And it kind of gets reduced to, he says, we must tend to our own garden. that's
There you
the
go.
that's the kind of punchline, is like, no, you're not listening. We got to tend to our own garden because that's what we can control. That's what we can, and there's a kind of comic cynicism in that because it's a satire, but it is ultimately saying that's what we That's what you can do.
That's right. That's right. And there's so many people, man, that get so angry if you even suggest such a thing. Wait a minute. How dare you like oh, what was the admiral that did the famous commencement speech at UT in Austin not a few years ago that became the chancellor. He said, the first thing you should do every morning is get up and make your bed. Jordan Peterson, make your bed. Just start there. And what does your room look like? What does your home look like? How's your family life? Get that in order. Then you can go change the world. But the thing is, you're actually changing the world. The fruit of that will spill over. And I think that a lot of people lose sight of that, brother. And again, it doesn't make you selfish or self-centered. You don't become freaking, Ayn Rand because you decide that, hey, I'm taking care of me, so I'm better suited to take care of you. That's why they tell us when we're on an airplane, hey, put your mask on first so that you can help those around you. It's kind of the same principle, right?
I think people underestimate what that's it. I think people get confused and they underestimate what it means for your ability to serve and provide for others and help when you do feel you're operating at your best, when you're feeling abundant, when you're that these are all the stages when you're at your best and often your kindest as well. It's hard to be kind and generous if you feel embittered and angry and frustrated. It's very hard to give that off to other people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, when am I going to be able to read your book? What's your writing process? Where are you in the process? And is it a daily habit? Are you putting your ass in the seat every day?
Honestly, this is pretty messy, pretty lumpy in terms of there's stages of great productivity and then stages of nothing moving. And so I think there is a plan to get the draft done by, some point this year to really have a draft and have something to just hand off and not let it expand forever. I think it just needs a cutoff point where it's like, here's
Yep.
so perhaps with my writing colleague Michelle, we'll choose a date and say this is this is the time to call it, and at least have something to go and show to some pros and get some. I guess I've got a couple of contacts now who are in the industry and the book industry who will at least look at it. So I've at least they'll at least read it and give me some thoughts, and that would be useful, really useful in and of itself. So I think that'll be the next steps. Yeah. But we'll see, after that, maybe that'll be it for fiction, or maybe it'll be the start. I don't know. I'm pretty open, speaking on my portfolio of bets. I'm pretty open to what it is at the moment. And writing is actually a good time. Writing is not always especially lucrative, but it is a very good time to be able to have so many different ways to be a writer now. And like you say, Substack, if you want to write blogs on Medium, like Substack, there are some people just getting paid on Substack just to write newsletters. Yeah. And they say, hey, I'm just going to say this is $10 a month or $5 a month. And if you want it, this is what it is. And sometimes you are just like, I've just been like, I like this person enough. Like I'm game. Like, okay, $5 a month. Like, where before could a writer have charged anyone $5 a month for just their stuff? And you got to prove yourself still in a competitive world, but it's better than the world where you can't just put your ebook out there, or you could promote yourself now on YouTube. You can write blogs. You can do many, many different things and self-publish. And so I think it's a good world in terms of, like, if one form doesn't work for you, there might be a different form that works much better, or there might be a different style and, a way of doing it. So yeah, I'm pretty open to playing with a lot of different things at the moment. And I'm thinking of doing even some solo podcasts where I might just read out things I've been,
great idea,
like,
man. It's a great idea.
Short essays or short, things like that. I think would be super fun to do, like short essays on different topics. And there's a guy called David Wright who's a poet, who wrote a book called Consolations that he was featured on Sam Harris's podcast recently, but he's been in a couple of others as well. And he does these almost like discursive essays on a concept, like ambition or disappointment or purpose, or and he almost just unpacks what that concept is, and you know, how to think about it and stuff, and just things like that are really creative and interesting ways you can go. So yeah, it's a good time to be a an author in that way. And yeah, and that, and then the reading practice is part and parcel of that. So I'm always trying to, I'm trying to keep that train always going to make sure that the new input is coming in, because I do, Stephen King has said this, but I do just believe it's really hard to write anything. It's really hard to write if you don't read a lot. It's really, really hard.
You know, you recommended, if you want, I think it was on one of your videos, you recommended Stephen King's On Writing, if you want to
Mhm.
be a writer. And I grabbed that. I started a week ago, and it is phenomenal. I read The Institute here recently. Frankly, I didn't care for it that much. I haven't read a lot of Stephen King, but I do appreciate his unbelievable, just how prolific of a writer he is. And then to read about his upstart, he starts on writing with kind of how he got started and the struggle and how hard he worked, and then whenever he sold Carrie and what that was for him, and then just his attitude toward writing, I think it is a job. You have to treat it like a job. And then
Yeah.
another thing, to your point, first of all, I think the essays is a fantastic idea. I've actually done a couple of audio essays, and they're so fun. It's just, and here's what I did, and this is what I would encourage you to do, because one, you have that wonderful British dialect, and you could get some cool, even go to Fiverr maybe, and get an
Mm.
illustrator to do some cool images that just kind of come in and out of the screen, that tie into the essay that you're reading. I think you could use that as the video content. Then you could also have podcast content, and then you could also, write it, put it out somewhere in print. And that's one of the things I've told Abby, who we mentioned, my youngest, that wants to be a writer. She writes for the University of Colorado newspaper. And she was like, I'm trying to build my portfolio and it's so hard. And I said, well, hey, remember, one piece of content can be repurposed 3, 4 times. I said, you take that, whatever, as long as they'll allow you, write the one thing, but then submit it to the freaking Boulder Chamber of Commerce, submit it to some other reading, the Boulder Public Library. They probably have a newsletter, submit it everywhere, get published, just get out there. And so I think and the audio essays that I've done, there's, because a lot of times I want to tell the story and I want to play with audio and that sort of thing. So I think that's a fantastic idea. I love your videos. As a matter of fact, I will go to them to try to figure out, because you keep it very concise. I think you do them, you do a good job of not over creating, and where it has an authentic feel, but yet you have enough, you're obviously have better editing skills than me, because you can move your frames quickly. And I don't know, your messages are concise and good, and it's always good information. So I encourage you to keep that up, Steven. I really do.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I did really enjoy that, and would like to put out more. It's just quite time, uh big time sink doing
Wow.
videos, but I do enjoy it. And I yeah, I'd certainly like to get processes under for that, because I like doing it. It's yeah, I think concision is quite important to me when I'm trying to communicate an idea. And I always feel like, for better or worse, I always think I can't make this 25 minutes. Like this, like that's I can't do that. You know, ask people to sit there for 20 minutes. So yeah, maybe if I felt like I had a grand idea to really chew on, but I am always trying to slim down to like the essence of something. But yeah, no, I've had good feedback on those, so I'd like to do it more. I've been doing more of my brother on his channel as well, and just practice. You know, it took me so long to get even half good on video and speaking. It's very humbling how, when you actually do something that it seems so natural when you see other people do it, just getting comfortable with literally looking at the lens of a camera, how long that took me. to be able to sit there and talk to a camera on my own. It's crazy. You think you're going to be able to, and then your first time, and it's weird. You feel like you got it wrong. You didn't sound like you. It's a real shedding of the ego having
Oh,
to do those things.
it is. Well, it's a shedding of the ego, and it's also getting over the fact that, at least for me, is the thought of people on the other side of the camera thinking you must be an egomaniac for even doing it to begin with. I think that's worse for me, because
Right.
I'm like, I really don't, I don't care about this part of it. What I have to overcome is the, everyone around me, they're like, but again, to your point, there for at least the people that, might be out there going, who the hell does Jason think he is doing a podcast, all those things? I mean, what, most people in Tyler aren't doing that. For every one of those, most people are going, hey, like we were at that cocktail party. There was some lady I'd never met said, I love listening to your podcast. I'm like, well, thank you. I'm just so gracious. And because I want them to know, hey, I don't do it because I'm that great. It's stuff I like to talk about, and this is what I like to do. But that's the thing I have a hard time getting over, is the, not whether people will like it or not. I'm old enough now that it's like, I know some people are going to hate it. Some people are going to like it, and some people aren't going to give a damn. What I really don't want, though, is for people to, on the other side, to go, who the hell does this arrogant guy think he is? That's the hump that I really had to get over in my content. But I love your videos. I want you to start hammering those things out. Go batch some, just go spend a day doing them, because they're good, man. And you I think we're kindred spirits in that there's so many things we want to do, and by God's grace, we're able to do them.
Hmm.
And it makes it really hard to just go hammer out a lot of volume in one thing and get it there. But
Yeah.
dude, I'm glad that you're producing one. I cannot wait to get a hold of your book. I'm probably, I can't imagine the amount of emails and stuff you get, but I'm probably going to start nudging you a little bit to go, hey, and Lamont, 3 inches, put a little frame on your desk. All you need is 3 inches today, buddy. Just go right to 3 inches. And,
Yeah, man.
and
That'd be useful.
I will be happy to be that for you. And, oh, one thing, and dude, we always come in thinking that we're going to talk about something, and then we just kind of go off the rails, So I love
Yeah,
this.
sure.
This is so fun. But
I know you wanted to talk about reading a bit. I don't know, but we can put a pin in that. We can whatever you want.
well, I was going to ask you something even more highbrow than literature. So
Hmm.
you and Matthew have kind of carved a space in the relationship expert game. People look to you for advice. Did you watch this season of The Bachelor?
Oh, I didn't know. Was there
Well, well,
did I miss something special?
well, no, of course not. It's The Bachelor. But so here's the thing okay, so Abby, the one that I keep talking about, the writer in Colorado, since we were stuck together for a week, me taking care of her for her torn ACL, I did watch the end of The Bachelor this season because she loves to watch it. It's her guilty pleasure. And man, this dude that was on there this year told 3 different women, I mean, well, 2 for sure, after having sex with them, that he loved them. It was almost like he repeated from one to the next. I was like, that must be the worst bachelor ever. So anyway,
Wow.
you spared yourself, so we won't have to go into your analysis of how that dude did, how he does relationship wrong.
Yeah, I'd avoid telling 2 women you love them
Oh,
within an episode. Within the same
it's
week.
so look, man, I got even sucked into it, Steven. So he goes on and he's like, tells this one girl he's in love with her. And so then, you watch the next date and you're like, oh man, what's he going to do? Because I mean, he said he's in love with the other one. And then it's almost verbatim, the exact same little I'm in love with you speech to the second one. And I mean, both Abby and I were like, no way, that guy did not just do what he did. And yeah, it was interesting. And then the one girl that walked out on him, because when she found out he had had sex with the other 2, she's like, "Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm out." She ended up coming back and they're together now. So there you go.
Wow.
Yeah. So from
Yeah, well there's
Voltaire to
another
the
good
Bachelor.
reason. There's another good reason, like I said earlier, that passion and confidence are very charismatic, and it's the same with effusions of love.
Yeah.
It plays to some kind of a thing we want romantically, but there's a difference between what's, what you want to hear in that moment and maybe what's healthy to hear. But people hear, oh, he fell in love with me after one night, like what a passionate,
Yeah.
it must be real. But those are the ones that are often the relationships to bet against.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. Okay, yes, we need to have you back on to talk books, but I can't let you go without at least, give me let me try to categorize these. I told you I'm reading Don Quixote and enjoying the hell out of it, by the way. Kinda like that Voltaire book. It kinda reminds me, Don and Sancho. Sancho's kinda like the rational one going, "Hey, I think you're missing something." And Don Quixote has this idealistic view of himself as this
Right, right.
knight, and yet his stupid aide basically is like going, yeah, no, just give me my island and get the you keep just come on, let's just get this over with. But give me 3, like a classic, a contemporary read that it would be good right
Hmm.
now, like, 'cause I think we've got similar tastes, and then just a wild card that I should put in the library and read before we get together again.
Okay. So a classic, I would say, what's really worth the um so like do you mean like a big classic, like a long
Something
novel, or just
Yeah, something that's gonna challenge. Like I told you, I wanted to get into a Crime and Punishment, well, we didn't, but if it's some Tolstoy, I mean, to not to do another Russian writer, but just it's something dense. I have never read any Jane Austen. I've never read Sense and Sensibility or Jane Eyre or any of those. Um, if there's a Dickens, I told you Great Expectations is my favorite. Of course, those are not quite as dense, but just a
yeah,
classic that I need to get my hands on.
I would say.
Or maybe we should both just read Moby Dick since you said you're about to read that.
Oh no, that one. No, I have read Moby Dick. The one I haven't read was
Oh, that's right. You said you just wanted to read,
that yeah. I want to read more of the big Dickens books like
yeah.
Bleak House. I there was a I do. I mean, I've told you before, like my apex of kind of literary classics might be Ulysses by James Joyce.
I bought it after our conversation, so
That is an extremely challenging read. It is full of comedy and great moments, but it's kind of such a, it was the birth of modernism, that book, in terms
mhm.
of its more parts of it are in different voices, in different characters' heads, and it's a complex book. The thing I'd say about some of those, like I find there's so much taste in some of those, because some really speak to people and they love them. Like I love Ulysses. I know some big readers who it doesn't do so much for them, and
Right,
I know some I got a lot out of Moby Dick. I know some people just couldn't take chapters and chapters about
right,
descriptions of a whale.
right.
I and then some people, I do not really enjoy the writing of David Foster Wallace, and some people see David Foster Wallace as the second coming of Christ.
I don't get
And
okay, that's interesting, real quick, I'm glad you said that because that's one of those books for okay, you're an actual scholar. I'm just a typical reader out here that I picked up Infinite Jest, and I'm like, "I don't get it," and I feel stupid and the way it's structured, I mean, it's not typical
mhm,
chapters, and I'm like and I just couldn't, man, but I mean, it's still there, and it's like it's like my marathon read, I want to do it. I'm glad to hear you say that.
yeah, I found it. I've read a bunch of David Foster Wallace. I don't. I think his nonfiction is better than his fiction. I think some of his essays are definitely worthy of, that they have some great bits in them. I just it's just the whole aesthetic is not my aesthetic. I find it overwritten. I find it
Agree.
long-winded. I find there's a kind of, what is it? Uh I find it's like there's certainly a virtuosity to the writing, and certainly I'm not going to say he's like a bad, you know, objective bad writer. He certainly has some virtuosic sentences and things like that. But I think there's a complete sort of emotional void there. and I think his characters have nothing to them, essentially, to me. And I find the insights are very thin.
Yeah.
And so I like books for, like, I think Harold Bloom talks about criteria for literary merit being like aesthetic beauty, cognitive insight, and I think he said something like wisdom.
Mhm.
And I just don't find a lot of wisdom in David Foster Wallace. And I find the wisdom that people do pluck from it seems to be fairly long-winded ways of saying fairly trite things
Yeah,
that
I agree.
are like that are, I think, are fairly mundane when you break it down.
Yeah.
And I just think this sounds like a sort of undergraduate like quote, but that's my view, that's my aesthetic. It's not, I think the journalistic stuff has more merit to it, that I find, I think there's more to that, but it's just totally not my aesthetic. And I do like concision more. I like economy of like ideas. And I'm well, very different writers, but like a poetic writer who I think speaks great truths is like Cormac McCarthy, who
Yes.
I think there's like, it feels like he has like ancient wisdom in some of his books, like Blood Meridian, or All the Pretty Horses, or any of the Border trilogy, or Suttree, or there's so much power and lyricism in him. I think that man should have a Nobel Prize, if anyone should, for literature. It's quite unbelievable what he's made and created. And I don't mind writing being classics being offbeat. Like Gravity's Rainbow is a crazy book. It's massive, and it's like 1,000 pages. And
Yeah.
Thomas Pynchon actually has a much smaller book that some people like a lot more, called The Crying of Lot 49, which is very funny. But Gravity's Rainbow is this kind of huge epic, and that again is like, I enjoyed Gravity's Rainbow has some jaw-dropping writing. But I enjoyed it, but I struggle to recommend it because it's such a difficult to penetrate book. Whereas something like Crime and Punishment, you mentioned you've read, I think that is I do think that is a great work, and I really love some of the philosophical debate in that. I actually kind of prefer that to the Brothers Karamazov, which
Really?
the Brothers Karamazov is, some people see that as Dostoevsky's masterpiece, but I think I did hear Nabokov say he liked Crime and Punishment more, and I think I do too. But maybe Crime and Punishment is one of those ones that's so embedded in the consciousness in some ways that we've become a bit kind of numb to its themes of like redemption and guilt and all these kind of things he was struggling with at the time, like the fight against nihilism. And if man doesn't have God, then can he do what he will, and all these different kinds of big questions he was wrestling with. But I like Dostoevsky's understanding of people and character, and I feel like, say, unlike Foster Wallace, I feel he has a very rich understanding of characters and people, like Dickens, Shakespeare, obviously. Shakespeare's characters may be the most unrivaled in all of literature for their three-dimensionalness, their realness, and their complete human beings. So if you don't want to go and read a big novel, just go and read King Lear or Hamlet or any of those great tragedies, Shakespearean tragedies. There's just so much richness and life in there of like human folly and human folly.
What about Hunter S. Thompson? Have you ever read any? I have not read one of his books. Should I?
Sure. Yeah, I do. I do like Hunter S. Thompson. I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think he did become a little bit of a caricature of himself, and became maybe a bit of a broken record of kind of stuck in a certain time and place. But Fear and Loathing was a kind of important step in a certain kind of journalism, a certain kind of, it's so influential in terms of the way journalists put themselves in their stories after that, and the way it's not really even about the story he went to cover. It's more about the journey there. And
Right.
yeah, and so I think, yeah, I think that is his kind of masterpiece. And he has some other, some other fun stuff to read. He's not like one of my like people that I look at as a touchstone, but I do like him. I like I like Bret Easton Ellis for some of his kind of
I love Bret Easton Ellis. I mean, if I
yeah,
just like, I will still read American Psycho just for entertainment. Just, I mean, even though I've read him, it just for a laugh. I mean, I love.
yeah.
Now, have you read White? Is that the one that he wrote that was Trump?
Right, that was the non-fiction one. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't read
There's
that.
like his more like controversial
Yeah.
side, but I find him fun that he has like strong opinions, and it's fun to kind of like see that he doesn't care and he's just got strong views on stuff.
And it's the thing is, it's like he's very self-aware. I think that's what I think, because you would see him in the circle of friends of like a Patrick Bateman, or possibly being one of the rich kids that was friends in Less Than Zero. And he can laugh at. He knows, again, it's about being able to write those characters with such authenticity, not lionizing them, but showing their faults and how stupid they are, but also why they're the way they are, and why so many just normal people in everyday life think those people have it all together, and why they're what we should be aspiring to. I don't know.
Yeah. And there's a great like, I feel like he doesn't moralize, but he like shows you,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
just
exactly.
and it's, I like that detached sort of vibe when I don't like,
Yeah,
I don't like novels that are trying to give me a social message or a particular thing, but I don't mind if they show me things,
sure.
but yeah, and so I do like his aesthetic a lot. I actually, to answer your original question, big classic novel, I'd probably say like Anna Karenina is a really good one.
Okay,
I
haven't read
think that I think that Tolstoy, Anna Karenina, I think
got
that
it.
has so much of human life and folly and family and the complexity of love, and I think that has a lot of richness in it and is my favorite I've read of Tolstoy. So yeah, I think Anna Karenina can be a good choice if there's like a big meaty classic you want to read.
Okay.
Yeah, and contemporary, there's I think there's so many people doing, like, there's people doing interesting stuff contemporary fiction right now. I think I did read all of nearly, I've got the last one to read, Karl Ove Knausgaard, who is like a very big literary sensation. He wrote this 6-volume series of book called My Struggle, and
Wow.
it became like this project that just expanded, and it just became about his entire life and different parts of his life. And he,
Hell of a title.
hell of a title, yeah. He wrote it almost as a
Attention grabber.
he wrote it as a parody of
Yeah.
Mein
I
Kampf,
love
just
that.
using the title as a jumping off, and but he almost wanted the joke of it being like grandiose in that way. But it becomes like it's a rawly honest. He's so, I mean, it estranged a lot of his family because he was so honest in it.
See,
And
that's
his
Orgasm
dad,
at a Funeral would probably do that to me, my friend.
right, there you go, he one, not his dad, one of his uncle like didn't want to ever speak to him again, and it caused, but it was a sensation in Norway. I think one of every 10 people in Norway had read it at one
Wow.
point or whatever, and then it's expanded to the world and he became a big sensation. And so that book, you don't need to read all of them, but like, I found book two.
Okay.
Book two is called A Man in Love. You don't have to read them in any order because they're different. They're standalone, different parts of his life. But A Man in Love I thought was great because it's really about him having this guilt and struggle of domesticity, his domestic life,
Mhm.
his relationship with his wife. He's desperate to be a writer. He's in a foreign place in Sweden where he feels the people are different. And it's really like him, it's the story of him meeting his wife and also him going through this struggle of desperately wanting literary success, which he really did, but also trying to sort of balance his life. And I found it really, really good. yeah, and then is there anything really good recently?
I think that one's going to
Um,
be an inspiration for me to do the book that we were talking about.
that one's cool. Yeah, I would check that out as a next one. And then there's a bunch of interesting people at the moment. I think like someone called Lisa Halliday wrote a great book called Asymmetry. Sally Rooney has some good stuff. Yeah, there's some interesting people right now. Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, that's a good list. I'm going to get and on a. I'm definitely going to grab those. I'll finally read Ulysses since you recommended it last time. I bought it the day right when we got off the podcast. I still haven't done it, but there's a movie I want to recommend to you if you have not seen it. Coda, the one that's
Have I seen Coda?
it's a little independent film about the deaf family that the one daughter is not hearing impaired, and it's and again, what made me think about it is like you talking about a social sermon. You can't hardly watch a movie these days where there's not an axe to grind or trying to convince you should take some view. This one does none of that. It's just a great story. Good acting, good story. Coda. Totally recommend it. I think you can watch it on Apple, I think. And it's up for like 3 Academy Awards, which again amazes me that an actual good movie that people want to watch would be
Yeah.
nominated for an Academy Award. Very outside the box for those folks.
Awesome. That's cool. I've just seen that. I've just looked it up. That looks great.
No, it's
Yeah, I'd love to watch that.
you'll like it. Good, I mean, smart humor, touching story, not over the top. And there, as a father of daughters, there is one scene with the main character and her father, and you'll probably know which one when you get to it, what I'm talking about. May be one of the best father-child scenes I've ever seen in a movie.
Wow.
And it's just, and it's again not overdone. It's just sweet. It's tender. It's awesome. So there you go. There's a movie recommendation for you.
That's great, man. Looking forward to that. Did you watch Dune?
Which one?
Dune?
No, 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 no. I did not.
I thought
Should
that
I?
was great. That was that was definitely one of the like films I enjoyed the most at the
Okay.
cinema last year.
Okay.
Really enjoyed that. Yeah.
I'll be honest, I got so jaded with everything that was coming out that was, contemporary, that I started going back and watching old stuff, introduced because Jimlin was not a movie watcher. And as a matter of fact,
Right.
she had never seen Less Than Zero, never would have even thought about it. And she loved that movie. I said, I want to show you why Robert Downey Jr. is such an incredible actor. I'm like, that was art imitating reality. He was really stoned and high, and look how awesome he does in this. It was just, I love that movie. So she really enjoyed it, which kind of surprised me. But anyway, so
um, that's cool, man. Yeah, movies have they've had a dodgy couple of years. I think there's some great ones get squeaked through there, but yeah, I think the last 2 years I don't think has been very strong.
it's just all. I mean, it seems like it's weird. We just watched one too that was pretty well done. That you might want to check out. Deep Water. It's a Hulu movie that Ben Affleck is in. It was a pretty good thriller. They did a nice job. I thought the ending was a little trite, but it was worth it. And Ben Affleck's one of those actors that I generally avoid his movies because in real life I think he's kind of douchey. But
Mhm.
but yet I'm always surprised at how good of an actor he is. So it's like, yeah, I got to give it to the guy. He's pretty freaking talented. So
Yeah, yeah.
there's another one for you.
Very cool. Awesome, man.
Dude, Steven, as this is so fun, man. I mean, if George, if you guys bring back speaking generally, which by the way, you never corrected me last time when I kept calling it generally speaking because I listened to it instead of speaking generally, which makes much more sense as far as a catch. If you ever want just some, poorly educated American to come on and talk, I'm in. For instance, I'm with George. I still wear, when Jimlin will let me, blousy boxers. That's how much of a listener I am, my friend. I wear huge blousy boxers.
George's underwear.
Exactly. So
Yeah, awesome. Well, we'd love to have you when we get back started. I'll definitely let you know. But yeah, we'll definitely keep in touch. And touch base again on the books, an update on some of the great books, and
Oh,
I can give you a list of some of the best recent contemporary stuff as well.
yes, yes. Go for it.
Awesome. Oh, also Elena Ferrante, she's great. Your listeners might enjoy. Yeah, Elena Ferrante wrote a super great set of novels called the Neapolitan novels. They're really excellent as well. Um, yeah, so there you go.
Brother, this has been a blast for me. I hope it's been as fun for you. If it's even been this much as fun, then you've had a good day.
I've loved it, man. I love getting to catch up with you.
Well,
Um,
likewise, take care of yourself, man, and you're always welcome. If there's anything I can do to help with any project that you've got going on, man, please let me know.
cool, man. And yeah, your listeners can go check out the YouTube channel. I'll add more to it. Just YouTube Stephen Hussey, or at Stephen H Hussey on Instagram, or you can go Love Life Podcast that I host with my brother Matthew. So Love Life Podcast with Matthew Hussey.
Well, and I'm going to keep crashing your lives, but from now on, I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, hey, you should be writing. So, so just get
I
ready.
appreciate it.
All right, brother Hill. Let me do a little sign off here, and I'll tell you goodbye properly in just a sec. Hey, folks, thank you so much for joining Stephen Hussey and I on the Jason Wright Show. If you are watching this on YouTube, please do me a favor, go out and click subscribe, put some comments in, get the algorithms going, get a conversation going, and I would greatly appreciate that. Also, if you are listening to the podcast, please leave a 5-star rating. That really helps us go up in the rankings. And don't forget, you can go out to jasonrightnow.com and subscribe to the Vitruvian Letter. That is just my little repository of where I'm talking about all the things that I'm trying to do to improve always in all ways, which is exactly what I hope you will keep doing until we meet again. That's it. He's Stephen. I'm Jason, and we are out.